In this part of our series on viral health and safety skills, we explore resources for support beyond your child's school team. I'm Julie Swanson, I'm the Life Skills Lady, and I'm pleased to have Judith Ursitti, the Director of State Government Affairs for Autism Speaks. Welcome, Judith. Judith has her finger on the pulse of all resources throughout the United States for autism. And so I'm so pleased to have you. Judith, before we begin, could you talk to us a little bit about yourself and your role with Autism Speaks?
Absolutely, Julie, also known as Life Skills Lady. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share. I am a consumer of life skills services, and I'm also an advocate around those things. I joined Autism Speaks. It's been 13 years ago, 12 years ago now, in the State Government Affairs team. At the time, I was the mom of a 4-year-old son who had autism, and he was diagnosed a few years later also with a pretty significant intellectual disability. So we had challenges, accessing services for him when he was young, and I got very involved in advocacy in my home state of Texas, where it was really challenging terrain. And so after that, we moved to Boston, and I became involved with Autism Speaks, became employed by Autism Speaks, and I've been working around the country in various states: Connecticut, Massachusetts, North Dakota, Oklahoma, California, all over the country, trying to make sure that people all across the spectrum, level 1, level 2, level 3, have access to meaningful supports and services across their lifespan. And so it's been the honor of my life. We've gotten so much done. Things have changed dramatically with insurance and other things, but we have so much more to do. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to share today, and I'm so grateful for the platform you're providing, Julie. It's amazing.
Oh, well, thank you for being here and sharing all of your knowledge with the folks who are watching. And thank you for all the work that you've done with Autism Speaks. In this series, we talk about parents reaching out to their school team and through the IEP, the Individualized Education Program process, for support on viral health and safety skills: mask wearing, hand washing, social distancing, and other adaptive and life skills. But I wanted to make sure that we also let parents know, and caregivers, that there are other resources throughout the United States that they could reach out to, which is why I wanted to have you today. Thank you so much. Could you talk to us about what other resources could parents reach out to? And let me just say, with the caveat that we're talking about students all the way through the span of being in school to transition to adulthood.
Yeah, so it gets really tricky because our population, you have autism your entire life, and there are different levels of support needs, different ages. So it does get tricky. And I'm so glad you're asking this question, because in many places across the country, states where I work, IEP teams, although they should provide these services, may not be, even with a lot of advocacy from the families. So it's important to know where the other resources lie. So if I'm the parent of an 8-year-old child who has autism, maybe challenging behaviors or sensory needs, and you really need to have help in learning how to wear a mask and follow social distancing protocols, and I can't get the level of service I need with my IEP, or I just want to enhance that, what would I do? How would I find that service? So I'd look in 3 different buckets. And so the best thing you can do is find the time, and I know it's hard, but sit behind your computer, pull up Google or your favorite search engine, and you want to see if your state has a Department of Developmental Services. You could Google that. You could look for an autism division in your state, something like that. I would contact them and make sure you are registered with them. Sometimes you have to fill out forms to do that. It may seem a little overwhelming, but it's so important that I always say, you paper the file. That agency is going to have a file about your child that will grow over time. It's going to have information about them that will help support the level of service that they might need. So in this case, you can engage with them, get signed up, and then try to get some services through that department. A lot of times those services are going to come from Medicaid. And I feel like when you have small children, you know, younger children, and you're in the autism world, you're thinking Medicaid, what is that other than for health insurance? You're like, how is that going to help me? There are services called waiver services that these agencies help deliver. And a lot of those services are known as home and community-based services, and they can help your child learn these different skills. So for instance, it's not a mask wearing skill, but my son right now, he's 16, and he has, through our Department of Developmental Services in my state, he has funds through the state, and one of the goals is to help him learn to keep his seatbelt fastened and to fasten his seatbelt, which is so important to be in the community. That's an adaptive skill, it's a safety skill, and we're continuing to work on it. So that's one way to get a service that applies to people all across the spectrum, all ages. I would encourage you to look for your Department of Developmental Services, or you could also Google Autism Division to see if your state has something like that. Most, but not all, do. The other thing I would look to, another resource, is your health insurance. Over the last decade, Autism Speaks has worked really hard to make sure that health insurance policies just have the basic health insurance coverage in them for autism supports and services. So it's not going to be therapies like, I don't know, you know, dolphin therapy or something like that. It's speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, behavioral therapies like applied behavior analysis, psychological, psychiatric supports. In those supports, you can access supports and interventions that will help develop these adaptive skills. So you want to check your policy to see if it has autism services. You can work with your physician, your pediatrician, to get them just to write a prescription for occupational therapy, maybe to help with a certain adaptive skill like mask wearing, for instance. An OT could probably help a lot with that. Or you could also work with a behaviorist. So your pediatrician could write a prescription for applied behavior analysis, and you could come up with a behavior plan to learn how to wear a mask. And so you'll need to see if your health insurance covers it. The good news there too is if you see that your health insurance doesn't, which most do now, but if not, in most states now you can purchase what's known as a child-only plan. And that goes from age 26 down. The child-only plans include the autism mandates, the autism requirements that have been passed in all 50 states. So you can get access to those services, speech, OT, PT, ABA, and work on those adaptive skills, which are so important. So those are just some ideas about looking outside, enhancing what might be in your IEP team. And if you're not sure who to call, and you feel very overwhelmed by all this gobbledygook information. I know we use lots of acronyms and lots of terminology. My college-age daughter actually told me yesterday, she's like, Mom, I don't know what you're talking about like half the time when you're talking about it. But I took that as a compliment. But anyway, please, Autism Speaks has an autism response team. It's a group of incredible human beings who care about our community, who know a lot about our resources. They have FAQs about insurance. They have information about all these agencies I mentioned, the departments that can help, and they can get you on the right track. So you can call them at 888-AUTISM-2, and that's also 888-288-4762, or easier, if you have access to email, just email help@autismspeaks.org. And there's also a number that's managed by someone that's Spanish speaking, or actually several people that are Spanish speaking. So we're there for you. So I've just gone on and on, but I think it's important that people know that these resources are out there. And it's really hard to know sometimes when you're just overwhelmed with trying to live your life and care for your loved one with autism.
It is, and you know, thank you so much. It is overwhelming to get involved with these agencies, but it's worth it. It's worth putting in the time because the benefit is so great. And now you talked about 3 buckets. Can we just review 1, 2, 3? What are the 3 buckets?
Yeah, so just your DDS, your Department of Developmental Services, they might have some grants and programs that you can participate in. The second is health insurance. And then the third, which I sort of kind of combined with the first, is our waiver services, which are usually managed by your Department of Developmental Services. But in some states that don't have those waiver services might be managed just by the Medicaid agency in your state. So if you're having a hard time figuring out what waivers are available to you, I would encourage you to contact our autism response team.
Well, that is so incredibly helpful. And I hope people do reach out to the response team. It's a fabulous resource. You know, you mentioned just a bit ago, if you can't get these services through the IEP team. Well, I've put a printout together that you can print out right from the website. That is a supporting argument document for when you go to the IEP team, of hopefully why they shouldn't say no to you to put these adaptive skills into your IEP. And
So
I would also, and I would also just want to say that I would think that if a parent is able to get these services, that they could also reach out to their IEP team to say, can we collaborate with each other? Because oftentimes these are home supports and they should be collaborating with whatever the IEP also has to mimic them of what they're doing in the school setting, as it relates to these skills.
Right. In a perfect world, and I've worked hard to get this system going for my son, we have a board certified behavior analyst that oversees his program at school, but she also consults on the services that he gets from our Department of Developmental Services. So we have continuity between those two, and we can generalize and work together. It took me years to make that happen, kind of get the staff. And so that's why I would encourage everyone. I don't want it to make it to sound too daunting. Please step into this and persist. It's very important when you think about a lifetime of services. Start building those relationships now, working on those adaptive skills now. And I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but for some of the services, there are wait lists. And so you certainly, and they're very contingent on what state you live in too. So you want to get on those lists just as soon as possible so that you can walk through those open doors as soon as possible. So
well,
important.
Such incredibly helpful information. And as my mother used to say, there's no one in line waiting behind you to advocate for your child. So to your point, Judith, while these things can be daunting, I assure you it's worth it. And thank you so much for being with me on the Life Skills Lady and sharing all of your vast knowledge and great ideas for parents. Thank you so much.
Life Skills Lady. I hope we talk again soon. This was great.